One of the craziest stories in the history of the NFL, without a doubt, has to be the divisional round of the 1976 playoffs between the Baltimore Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, the Steelers won the game by a final score of 40-14, going on the road to completely annihilate the Colts and advance to the AFC Championship yet again in their quest for a three-peat. But the craziest part about the outcome of this game, a game in which Steelers quarterback Terry Bradshaw did what was unheard of back then and threw for a perfect passer rating, was the fact that this game saved lives. Seriously. Because the Steelers were up by so many points and the outcome of the game was not in doubt during the fourth quarter, fans began to pile out of the exits to Memorial Stadium long before the game was over. Normally, you're chastising the fans for leaving a playoff game before the clock hits triple zeros. But the fans in the upper deck that decided to do that made the right call. Not just because the Colts had no way of erasing a 4-score deficit that late, but because almost immediately after the game ended, a plane crashed and landed directly in the upper deck of the stadium. If there were people there, we could have been looking at the biggest tragedy in the history of American sports. If there were people there, hundreds of people, or even thousands of people, would have lost their lives. If this game was a close contest and went into overtime, and we witnessed this happen in front of a national television audience, who knows what would have happened and how the sport and society would have been changed. Instead, the blowout saved lives, and no innocent people got injured as a result. There is a great video on that topic by the guys over at Secret Base, and they can tell the story in more depth better than I ever could. So if you want to see that video, go check it out, because it's a great one, and one of my favorites by an already great channel. So why do I bring that game up? Because that's not the only time that the Colts ended up saving lives by playing so poorly against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Seriously, if I had a nickel for every time the Colts laid an egg against the Steelers in a big game, and it ended up saving people from dying or getting seriously injured, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Because a decade and a half later, in 1992, when the Steelers played the Colts, now known as the Indianapolis Colts, we got a similar case of deja vu with some Colts fans who were witnessing a disaster on the television screen, only to witness an even bigger disaster outside their homes. Because this is the story behind Grace Yeagley, the 1992 Colts, the game against the Steelers, and one of the craziest incidents in NFL history that you probably never heard of before. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time when incompetence actually saved lives. Before I talk about the incident in question and just how bizarre it was, we need some context to understand the importance of this game right here, and how the game itself was going. It's November 22nd, 1992. It's week 12 of the NFL season, and as we're heading down the stretch, we've got a big AFC battle on our hands and a rematch of that playoff game from 1976 all those years ago between the Indianapolis Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers over at Three Rivers Stadium. To say that this was a big game for both of these clubs would be putting it lightly. For the Colts, they needed to win this one in order to keep their playoff hopes alive and have any chance at making it for the first time since 1987. They entered this game at 4-6, as following a 4-3 start to the season, 3 straight losses, including back-to-back shutouts, put them 2 back of the playoff hunt, slipping further and further away under head coach Ted Marchibroda, who, oddly enough, was now back with the Colts after coaching the team in Baltimore in that aforementioned 1976 game. Lose this game at 4-7 your season is basically over. As for the Steelers, they entered this game as one of the best teams in football, sitting atop the AFC Central with a 7-3 record. Win this one on your home field as 12-point favorites and improve to 8-3, and you fend off the Houston Oilers in the division hunt and can make a push for one of those top 2 seeds, giving you a bye in the playoffs. So when you've got a red-hot Steelers team that's won 4 out of 5, going up against an ice-cold Colts team that's lost 3 straight, and the game is in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers are heavy favorites, it's not surprising as to how this game went, I'll put it that way. As you can tell from the highlights of the game, this one was pretty much all Steelers, as they all but ended the Colts season by winning the game 30-14. At no point in the contest did the Colts lead it or even tie it outside of the initial 0-0 score, as the Steelers led it 13-0 at the halftime break and 27-7 at the end of 3 quarters. Defensively, the Steelers played lights out, with the Colts holding onto the ball for just 22 out of a possible 60 minutes, and with starting quarterback Jack Trudeau throwing 3 interceptions while completing just 46% of his passes. The Steelers dominated on the ground, running the ball for 253 yards on over 5.7 yards per carry, with running back Barry Foster, who led the entire NFL in rushing attempts that season and ended the season as an AP first-team All-Pro and as a Pro Bowler, picking up 168 yards and 2 touchdowns in arguably his best game of the season, which is saying a lot because he had a lot of good games that year. The Colts got just 3 first downs the entire first half, not crossing midfield until 1 minute to go in the half, and the only reason they crossed midfield was because they started the drive past midfield after a Steeler fumble. If you watch this game, there was never any point where it crossed your mind that the Colts had a chance to win it. The Steelers were the better team. The Steelers were the more dominant team, and the game played out exactly as many people expected it to. And one of the many watching this bloodbath unfold was a 71-year-old woman named Grace Bowman Yeagley. Grace was an Indianapolis native and never missed a second of Colts football. When the Colts moved to Indianapolis in 1984, she adopted them as her team and never looked back, through the highs and the lows, albeit many lows, considering this was the days before they got Peyton Manning. And unfortunately for Grace, 1992 was not a kind year for her and her family in many ways. Earlier that year, her brother Edward passed away at the age of 67. A couple of years before that, in 1989, her husband, Dutch, passed away. There had been a lot of loss in Grace's family as of late, and it's what's about to make this moment right here during this Steelers-Colts game all the more remarkable. Because at the same time that the game was taking place, on November 22nd, this happened, as one of the most surprising tornado outbreaks in the state of Indiana occurred when anywhere from 13 to 15 different tornadoes touched down. There are varying reports on just how many tornadoes touched down, with some sources saying 13 and some saying 15. Either way, it was a lot of tornadoes. Thank goodness this game was not being played in Indianapolis and instead was being played in Pittsburgh, because it could have been incredibly dangerous to everyone involved if the Colts were hosting, especially if you had a bunch of people on the road who decided to leave the game early. The tornadoes caused millions upon millions of dollars in damages, with homes being destroyed, power lines falling down, and parts of Indiana right before Thanksgiving resembling a war zone. A lot of people got injured from this, which is to be expected when you've got debris flying everywhere. And Stephen Goldsmith, the mayor of Indianapolis, shut down the city, saying, "This area is shut down until daylight. People who come into the area, if they don't live here, will be turned away." More than 11,000 people in Indianapolis alone lost power due to the tornadoes that came from poor weather in Texas and Ohio. As meteorologist Henry Steigerwald said, "If you've got cold above and warm below, You have an unstable situation. That's what happened. Everything got together in the right ingredients. And the tornadoes were taking place in the afternoon between 2 to 6 p.m., right as this game right here was taking place between the Steelers and the Colts. One of the residents watching the game in Indianapolis, while the tornadoes were touching down, the aforementioned Grace Yeagley. And she was so disgusted by her team's play that she just decided to stop watching. She couldn't take it anymore. 4 straight losses, another game where the team wasn't even looking competitive, and another game where this anemic offense couldn't move the ball down the field, seeing as they enter this game with the second worst offense in football, with the only team worse than them being the Seattle Seahawks, who somehow only scored 59 points through the first 10 games. And their offense wasn't getting any better during this game right here, with just 3 first downs in the first half and no points, and with Jack Trudeau looking terrible. There's only so much that someone can take before they reach their breaking point. And this game for Grace was her breaking point. She watched every snap of Colts football, but enough was enough, and she decided to turn the game off early and do something else, meaning that she was no longer wasting her time in front of her television and instead was elsewhere around the house. Turns out, the Colts sucking during this game right here saved her life. Seriously, if there was ever a time for the Colts to lay an egg, this was the time. Because when Grace, after doing some things around the house, came back to her TV room, she found the room to be completely destroyed. The tornado in the area? Turns out it hit her house on 5201 Thornley Drive, which for some perspective is a 10-mile drive to Lucas Oil Stadium today, so not far outside of downtown at all. And when the tornado hit her house, the large glass window where her chair and her TV were situated, it was destroyed. As Grace said, the Colts were so bad that I was just disgusted and flipped off the set, and I went to another room. Normally, she would never turn off a Colts game early or leave a Colts game early, because there's always a chance. But she was so disgusted that she made an exception this time, and this exception ended up saving her life. There is a very good chance that if the Colts were winning or were competitive during this game right here, that she would have been in front of her TV like she always was, would have been knocked over, would have had glass in her body, would have had a television set crushing her, and she would have been dead. The fact that this didn't happen? Sort of a miracle. As you can see on this map, of course, there was some minor damage to the house, but that paled in comparison to what could have happened if the Colts were playing well. Said Richard McDonald, Grace's son, on the aftermath as he was cleaning up the debris in the yard, "I have trouble talking about this, but we have lost a lot of family members recently. At least, my mom is going to be with us for Thanksgiving." And you can thank the Colts sucking for that. Seriously. Grace said it for all of this, that this was the first time I had ever walked away from a Colts game. And if they say that you never forget your first time doing anything, however trivial it may be, when it came to walking away from this game right here, that might be the understatement of the century. Sadly, Grace is no longer with us, as she passed away on March 28, 2009, at the age of 90. And from everything I've read about her, she seemed like an amazing person who helped out in the community and always brightened up Thanksgiving, and got to do so for another decade and a half after the tornado. At least she got to see the Colts win a Super Bowl before she passed and got to see the team at its peak, seeing as she saw them at their absolute lowest point in Indianapolis, all things considered. At the end of the day, football is just a game, and it's not life or death. But quite literally, in 1992, the Colts losing this game in blowout fashion was a matter of life or death. Because on this November day in 1992, even though the Colts offense stunk on the field, they were so bad that they were good enough to save lives off of it. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.